down to number 5, shit's about to get real. But this next film I'm about to discuss is just shit. Adam Sandler is now famous for making unfunny and cringe-worthy comedies. Any praises that he had earned himself during his Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore days have now been replaced with sheer contempt and ridicule from the audience. There wasn't a single moment, not even a throwback to the obviously nostalgia-baiting video game consoles in the 80s could redeem this overlong, over-the-top, and soulless excuse of a film. It's amazing to think that with a budget of 88 million and talents like Brian Cox, Josh Gad, and Peter Dinklage, this movie couldn't be saved from its own self-indulgence. For a comedy film, the humor was almost non-existent, and the hatched editing job often made me question whether Adam Sandler is just trolling us at this point. He has now become the Nicolas Cage for comedies. There, I said it. Pixel deserves 2.5 out of 10. Whether you love Marvel films or absolutely despise them, you cannot deny its relevancy and the game-changing tide that took Hollywood by storm over the last decade. The Marvel Cinematic Universe forever redefined filmmaking. Nowadays, it's unlikely for anyone to have never heard of Iron Man, Captain America, or the Avengers, or not to recognize the faces of Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, etc., etc. It is a rising empire that shatters box offices and makes banks. So it's not surprising the hype for Age of Ultron was off the charts. While some may regard the sequel as a step down from the original 2012 Avengers, I actually enjoyed it more. Personally, I think it relied less on the 3-act story structure and played it less safe than the original. It is less star-spangled hopeful and more personal and twisted. There was a sense of urgency and tension that I never felt with the original, and the stake was higher than the one in the 2012 Avengers. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't a huge fan of the Black Widow-Hulk romance hand-touching situation, and I couldn't care less about Hawkeye's family, but the overall tone of this movie made me care for the characters in a very involving way. There were still plenty of funny moments throughout the film, and they somehow worked with this movie's darker approach. It's less predictable than the Avengers, and for me, it has a much higher rewatchability. Most importantly, it made me hella excited for Phase 3, which kicks off next summer with Civil War. Age of Ultron gets 8.8 out of 10. Hot Pursuit stars Sofia Vergara playing the character she always plays on the run, with Reese Witherspoon playing the character she always plays in a film that must have been written for the sake of filling the gap between the awkward month of March and the summer movie season. I've seen versions of this dull and witless movie many times before. Better versions. Much, much better versions. This should be enough to turn you off from ever watching this. I got dragged along by my friends. It was either that or studying for the LSAT. Yeah, there's really nothing more to say about this film except for the fact that it's probably one of the worst films I've seen all year. This movie gets 2.3 out of 10. Holy flame-throwing guitar! George Miller's high-speed desert apocalyptic epic was unlike anything I've seen this year. Everything about this experience was exceptional. From the ultra-realistic action stunts, to the crisp and color-corrected HD images, to the dedicated performance from Tom Hardy, Nicholas Hoult, but especially a scene-stealing Charlize Theron, to the, you guessed it, flame-spitting rock guitar that made me play 6 hours straight of Guitar Heroes after I got home. Mad Max Fury Road was gritty, unique, and downright spectacularly rewarding. What makes this film so great is that its simplicity makes you appreciate the craftsmanship that went into the production. And the sheer set of this film was a wonder to behold. They really don't make them like this anymore. I'm just glad that we still get one every once in a while. Mad Max Fury Road gets 9 out of 10. In another world, Pan would have been a great film. It had a lot of potentials to be the Peter Pan movie of this decade. The cast was top-notch, and the director has proven himself as a man with great vision. But not even Joe Wright, the man who gave us masterpieces like Atonement and Hannah, couldn't spark any film magic in the CGI overkill. I was actually very much looking forward to see this movie. The story of Peter Pan has always been a favorite of mine, and the 2003 version has had a lasting impression on me. I was excited after they announced the cast of Peter in this film, and he looked just like a Peter Pan. So I don't know exactly what went wrong, other than the fact that somewhere after the first 20 minutes of the movie, everything just took a turn for the worse, and it just got worse and worse. From Hugh Jackman singing a Nirvana song in a movie set in the early 20th century, to the miscasting of Rooney Mara as the native tribal princess Tiger Lily, to the horrible mess of a finale filled with unconvincing visuals, Pan buried any potentials it had with his obviously unpolished script and the general lack of direction. I walked out of the theater feeling crushingly disappointed and angry. Peter Pan should never make you feel angry. This movie gets 2.2 out of 10. I saw Ant-Man twice, and the second time was just as great as the first. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, a lot of people had doubts whether this film could work as an MCU piece. It just felt very far-fetched and clashing with the established tone set by the previous Marvel films. When Paul Rudd was attached to the star, people were even more skeptical. Another comedian playing a superhero. Come on, what has Marvel turned into? After an eventful production that ultimately saw the departure of Edgar Wright, a man who had been working on an Ant-Man film since before the creation of MCU, this movie seemed hopelessly doomed. However, new director Peyton Reed managed to salvage this project and turn it into a self-referential comedy adventure about an everyman that many people can relate to. Ant-Man is the first MCU movie in a long time that didn't feel like a setup for the future Marvel project. And it was treated as a standalone that emphasized on telling a light-hearted story about second chances and what it means to be somebody's hero. It's a thrilling action-adventure filled with signature Marvel and Paul Rudd humor, while occasionally reminding us sometimes we don't need to take things too seriously. Sometimes even a man as tiny as an ant can make a difference. It's not just a great MCU film, it's a great film. I give Ant-Man 9 out of 10. I will write a fan fiction about my bedroom encounters with Scarlett Johansson and someone better turn that into a movie. This film gets a 2. Because despite everything else, Dakota Johnson surprised me with her acting chops. But 2 is the ceiling. After the smashing success that was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation had some huge shoes to fill. The series is aging and so is Tom Cruise. So this movie decided to shift gear and focus on a new character played by Rebecca Ferguson. In many ways, she was the star of this film. Tom Cruise still stole many scenes, including that jaw-droppingly delicious opening sequence of Ethan Hunt dangling in midair on a plane. But it was Ferguson's MI6 agent Elsa Faust that made the character dynamic so interesting to watch. It is a movie that not only gave us more of the well-executed espionage actions and humor from Ghost Protocol, but also complemented it with a well-told story that understood the fact the Mission Impossible franchise is an aging series. The movie never felt like a cash-in, and the writing was sharp and never lazy, and Tom Cruise's dedication to do everything himself deserved props on its own. The villain in this film is also formidable enough that it was just as satisfying to see how his story unfolded as it was with our heroes. In the end, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation is a worthy addition to the Mission film series, and I hope the movies will go on for many more years. I gave this film a 9.3 out of 10. I think somewhere along the line, we forget that simply throwing familiar names at people's faces doesn't make the movie featuring these names any interesting. Man, talk about catastrophic failure! This disastrous superhero entry, a poor attempt for 20th Century Fox to hold on to the film rights to the characters, failed in almost every respect as a movie. After a pretentious attempt to be dark and gritty by rebooting a superhero team that nobody wanted to see on the big screen to begin with, the movie hired the one director that turned the production of the film into a living hell. After many reshoots and scripts adjustments and wigs later, Fantastic Four became Fant4sticks, and the finished product was a structureless and depressing cautionary tale of how not to make a movie. A lack of any substance, character development, story development, and a third act made watching Fant4sticks the most miserable cinematic experience of my life. I never wanted my money back for any film, except for this one. The movie did so bad that Fox had since canceled the planned sequel. Honestly, I'd sooner watch Alvin and the Chipmunks sequels than to ever sit through Fant4stick again. So my number 1 worst movie of 2015 gets 1.5 out of 10. And that's me being generous. Before I unveil my number 1 best film of 2015, I do have some honorable mentions for both the worst film and best films categories. And they are as follows. This is it, the winner of all winners, and I could eat this movie out like cotton candy. Okay, that was a weird thing to say. Unlike a lot of my friends, I had high hopes for Kingsman because Matthew Vaughn had yet to disappoint me. Rumor has it that he left the production of X-Men Days of Future Past so he could make this movie. So he must have had faith in this movie's success. And boy was he right. It was everything I wanted in a summer blockbuster, and this wasn't even released during the summer. The movie isn't just some mindless action piece that features the over-the-top and dramatic performance from Samuel L. Jackson. No, this is a movie that cleverly combines stylish action, subtle and blatant humor, and a fascinating British charm, and wraps them all up in a gripping and riveting journey of an unlikely hero, as he transforms himself from a delinquent raised in a shattered family to a gentleman worthy of saving the world. The spellbinding visuals and the mesmerizing performance from Colin Firth and newcomer Taron Egerton gave this movie a much-needed edge. I was cheering with the audience as the film reached its climax. Samuel Jackson's comedic antagonist is not only a parody of spy film villains, but also a parody of Hollywood's love for stereotyping good versus evil. But underneath all the exteriors, this was a heartfelt coming-of-age story that reminded us we can choose our own path if we believe in it. Because deep down, we all have the potential to become something greater. With that said, I give Kingsman: The Secret Service 9.5 out of 10. Alright guys, there you have it. So these are my top 10 best and worst movies of 2015. Did any of yours make the list? Do any of you want to punch me in the face now? Feel free to leave your comments in this comment section below. 2015 has been a great year, and I can't wait to see you guys in 2016. So for the last time this year, this is Kev, signing out.